Welcome to Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, the go-to podcast for financial advisors aiming to grow their assets under management, stand out in a crowded market, and retain assets nearly forever. Are you advising high net worth clients who own appreciated capital assets? Do you want to help them sell without losing a quarter, a third, or even more of their hard-earned profits to capital gains taxes? Then this podcast is tailored for you. Each episode brings you the latest strategies and expert advice from leading financial advisors, seasoned attorneys, and experienced CPAs. Learn how to maximize your clients' wealth, minimize their taxes, and supercharge your advisory practice with actionable insights. Join us on Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, where you'll gain the knowledge and tools to set yourself apart and achieve unparalleled success in wealth management. Subscribe now and empower your practice for a brighter, more prosperous future. Welcome to another issue of Sterling Insights. I'm your host, Roger Silk. Our guest today is Scott Brown. Scott brings a rare mix of legal, operational, and leadership experience to the wealth management world. He does that as president of Pinnacle Associates, a multi-billion-dollar RIA, serving high net worth clients and institutions. Scott's has held rules across compliance, legal, and strategy, giving him a 360-degree view of the business. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on. And for those listening coming up, happy almost Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Your background might be a little bit unusual. Can you maybe start with how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, so absolutely. It is a little different. I didn't start on the portfolio management side. I actually started as a litigator, believe it or not, in Northern New Jersey and New York City. I think I watched a lot of LA Law growing up, and I liked Corbin Bernsen, and I decided, hey, let me try my hat at being a litigator. Had a great opportunity, a great education, and I started practicing for several years as a litigator at a large law firm. And I just found that it really wasn't for me. There was an event that happened really early on in my career, and I'm very thankful for it, where I was an associate working on a case, and it was a contract dispute, and we were representing a plaintiff, and he was looking for $500,000. And I remember I was young, I negotiated, and I was able to get him about $475,000. And I went back and I was all excited, and I was telling him I got him what he wanted. I'm winning the case. I was excited. And he said, I went back with the offer that was $25,000 off, and he started yelling at me. And he said, what are you doing? I asked for 500. You're a paid bulldog. I want you to blah, 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 blah. And I'm paying you to be a pit bull. And it was really at that moment I realized I didn't want to have a career where I was a paid pit bull, that I really found myself being more of a mediator, a builder, a creator, someone who I had more of an entrepreneurial spirit. And so it just so happened that at that role, I had gotten some experience in the securities litigation industry. Soon after that, I was able to join another law firm, but also consulting firm that worked exclusively with registered investment advisors. I actually spent the next almost decade working with just investment advisors, not broker dealers, not insurance agents, but investment advisors, and helping them build and create and all the things that I was looking to do. I found my calling. I love that fiduciary world. I loved the investment advisory world. I loved being on that side of the fence. I worked with, at that time, 300 different investment advisors, large, small, et cetera. Ultimately, about now 11 years ago, instead of working with 300 different investment advisors, I was lucky enough to find a role in-house with one advisor, and that's Pinnacle Associates. And I've been here for, again, now 11 years, starting off as their general counsel. I've worn the compliance hat. Eventually, after a couple of years, got into the COO role. So I dealt with all things COO. And a few years later, there was an opening for the president role, and I I took that over, and that is how I got here.
So, Scott, what were you doing before you joined Pinnacle?
A variety of things, and talked a little bit about the legal career. One of the things I did had the law firm and consulting firm that focused solely on art was I spent about 8 of my years there helping financial advisors basically break away from the large wirehouses and start their own independent RIAs. That was one of the most exciting things that I did. I worked very closely with the major custodians, Schwab and Fidelity at the time. It was still new to the point where I'd fly out to Phoenix, I'd fly out to California, I'd meet people in New York, and we'd sit down with a group of very intelligent, successful advisors at one of these wirehouses, and I'd start explaining how great the independent world was and what an RIA was. And they'd say, an IRA? And I said, no, not an IRA. I said an RIA. And what was really interesting about that is it really goes back to the whole point of how, even though the world has been around for a while, it's still in its new phases or its early stages. Wonderful educating people on the benefits of launching their own entrepreneurial registered investment advisor. And I worked with a lot of those firms for a long time, and I'm still friends with them.
It sounds like you were representing them as outside counsel to come inside.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Pinnacle wasn't one of my clients at my last organization, but there was a mutual connection that I have in the industry. And he was counsel for this firm, and he knew they were looking for an in-house counsel role. He introduced me, and the rest was history.
But you hadn't been like looking, oh, I want to get out of law practice. I want to get into the RA world.
So I knew I wanted to work for one RIA and get involved in-house in the investment advisory world. So that was on my horizon. I enjoyed working as a consultant and lawyer for hundreds of people, but you were spread thin, great education, but I wanted to take that and focus all of the stuff that I had learned in-house at one organization. And that's...
Scott, I'd like to ask you now a little bit about Pinnacle. Tell us a little bit about Pinnacle, and I'll ask you some specific questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Pinnacle itself, before I get into when we were founded and how many people we have and how much we manage, one of the things I really like a lot about Pinnacle is people. It just got good bones. Culture is the number one thing that I care about, the number one thing that we talk about. And we've done a lot of work at trying to hire talent and people. So that kind of trickles down from the top, and the thought process being, you got good people, people are happy, you treat them well, you treat them with respect, it trickles down to the clients. And so the first thing that jumps out of my mind when I think about Pinnacle is the people. We spent a lot of time cultivating that. The firm itself, for an independent RIA, we've been around for quite some time. We've been around since 1986.
Yeah.
That's a long time. We manage a little over 10 billion we have about 70 employees. We have offices mostly on the East Coast in the Connecticut, New York, New Jersey area. We actually did an acquisition a couple of years ago in Virginia. So we have offices in Richmond and Charlottesville in the mid-Atlantic. There are really two sides of our business. We have a smaller part of our business these days that we'll call institutional or asset management. So there's a flagship product called SMID, small and mid cap, where typical client would be endowment, foundation, someone who's not looking for financial planning or to diversify, is just looking for a specific strategy. And that's been in place for over 30 years, very successfully. And then at this point, about 80 to 90% of our business would be in the more traditional wealth management industry. So financial planning, John and Jane Smith, high net worth clients. And we help them from everything from financial planning to managing their investments.
So on the private client side, which sounds like is that where the growth in the business is?
So in recent years, a lot of the growth has come from that side of the business. It's great to have both sides of the fence. I think they balance each other and they add value to each other. You kind of get the institutional resources at a boutique firm, but a lot of the growth, as with many RIAs, has come from the planning and the private clients in the business.
Scott, what would you say makes Pinnacle unique as an RIA?
Some of the things that we do that I think a lot of advisors are not doing, in fact, few, are the way that we structure our committees and the way that we try and bring teams together. I've mentioned this on the investment side. We have large cap committees and small cap committees, but we dive even deeper. So we have a next gen committee, which is next generation, and it's made up with mostly our younger advisors and our younger staff. And we're trying to hand the torch off to them and say, listen, what do you think the firm should be doing? What services should we provide? How do we market? What technologies we should be using? What do you think of AI? What do you think of crypto? And come back to the larger board with recommendations of how we stay ahead of the curve, how we address the next gen clients, not only for existing families, older parents who are handing down their children to us, but just going out and finding what we call Henrys, which are high earners, not rich yet, but how do you market to them and what are they looking for that may be different from people who are pre-retirement or retirement age? But we've really tasked that to our younger generation. And I think it gives us an edge because we have the right demographic thinking about the right issues that maybe we can't think about. Similarly, we have a CFP committee that's focused on making sure that the client experience on the planning side is consistent and we're always adding services. And we actually have something called the Pinnacle Academy, which is a training academy for younger advisors led by our senior planners, which is let's share our knowledge, have them do a mock client meeting. Every Monday, we have a meeting where someone is presenting outside or inside the firm on a topic. And it's really a training academy inside the firm that just makes sure we're thinking a couple steps ahead. And I think a lot of firms, a lot of advisors are blocking and tackling and just trying to get through the next day. Hopefully, we're thinking a few chess moves ahead, and this allows us to stay ahead of the curve.
What's your ideal client look like?
I get this question a lot, and I love different people's answers to this. So our sweet spot, after 40 years, you have clients all over the map. Ultra high net worth clients and 9 figures and all the way down to smaller clients. But really, we focus on the $2 to $20 million client, which some people might think of a large range, but it would be a high net worth family that is, a lot of them are business owners and entrepreneurs. So we have a lot of those families between 2 and 20 who are business owners. Ideal for us are clients that need financial planning and embrace financial planning and want that to be a part of their engagement, and also need the investment management side of it as well. We are not a firm that we only work with doctors. We only work with airline pilots. We don't have that niche. What I think we're really good at, though, is the typical high net worth family, especially business owners that fall into that 2 to 20 range, who really embrace the services that we provide.
Is that where you're aiming to grow the business?
Yeah. And listen, there's an argument to say that the $1 to $5 million client needs something different than the 5 to 15 and over 20 million. I think we're fortunate enough. We have about 7 different advisory teams that can do business consulting, that can do a variety of things to address clients of all asset sizes. I really think to build a scalable business, you have to focus and create boundaries about where your efforts are going to be. For example, the estate planning needs of a $100 million family, which we have, are likely going to be different than a family that has 2 to 5 million. So a lot of the resources, higher talents that we brought in have been focused on that really 2 to 20 million client and what they would need in that whole full life cycle of an advisory relationship, from estate planning needs, retirement needs, and charitable giving, all the stuff that you know about, Roger, and you deal with every day, but all of those things.
Do you guys have growth targets as a firm?
We do. So we like to target 5% organic growth. We have groups that are a little less. We have groups that are a little more. There are some firms out there that are touting double-digit growth at this point. We're more in the let's keep our retention rates high, target the 5% plus. We love to see 5 to 7% organic growth rate, and that's where we'd be. But we do look at growth holistically between kind of inorganic growth. I think all of that plays a role. The simple answer would be 5+% is where we target right now.
Just make sure our terminology is clear.
Sure.
organic growth is adding new clients or adding new assets from existing clients.
No, yeah, to be more specific, 5% growth in a perfect world organically to me would be growth without market performance, just bringing in new business. When you really factor in performance, we've done very well. The market has helped us, but we are also stock pickers ourselves and we do all the trading in-house. So our growth rates are higher when you factor in performance. When I talk about inorganic growth, what I'm really talking about is acquisitions, acquiring another advisory firm, which we've done in recent years.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that.
Yeah. And Roger, those terms get thrown around so much depending on where you are. I get it, but that's how we define it.
Yeah. It's always there are lots of terms that get thrown around and people just don't necessarily be on the same page because what you mean by a word might not be what I think it means and vice versa. So that's why I asked for the clarification.
Yeah, no.
So do you guys, as you grow, is the team growing or does the team have capacity already and you're just growing into it?
We have some teams that have capacity, but really over the last couple of years, we've been in building mode and growth mode. So we've hired to make sure we have capacity, and that may be, it doesn't always have to be the most senior portfolio manager that you're adding to the team. So for some groups, we felt that they needed a client service associate, or CSA is the term we need, because they needed more administrative support to open the senior people up to do more things. We've also made some financial planning hires, some senior CFPs, because we felt that opened up our teams. We feel like we can handle the capacity at this point, but honestly, we are thinking about it every quarter, every year as part of our strategic plan. When we look forward, is how do we make sure that we are not overwhelmed? The last thing we want to do is have one advisor, one person dealing with 500 clients. Just not good for anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you guys mainly a fee-based or you do fee for service or hourly? How do you guys organize that?
Yeah, so we are a fee-based only, and that is, I think, the way that you define it, Roger, which is 1% of a, and that's how we charge a fee. We really don't charge fixed fees. We don't charge hourly fees. As I mentioned, we're an investment advisor only, so we're not a broker-dealer or an insurance agency, so we don't charge commissions. On top of it, it really is just that asset-based fee as we define it, which is a percentage of assets under management.
So it's very clear, very transparent, no hidden costs. And if you guys do you do all of this stock picking yourselves or do you guys use any outside managers?
Yeah, no, I don't want to call us a unicorn necessarily. I know there are other firms that do that, but we were built that way. We do all of the investment management in-house. So most of our teams are stock pickers. We pick the individual stocks. Because we're a private client group, obviously we deal with fixed income, but we have people here who deal with that. So all of that's done in-house. It's a very rare occurrence where we'd outsource any of the active management unless it's some sort of special request or specialty. And I think that helps and adds to our underlying value proposition for sure.
So would it be the case that most of your clients' portfolios would consist of individual names?
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Correct. So we are not a huge mutual fund shop. So individual names, individual stocks, depending on the client size, ETFs are appropriate as well. As I said, fixed income, munis, corporate bonds, relatively plain vanilla stuff, but that is really our universe. I think the thing that might distinguish us a bit is we're not heavy into the mutual fund world. I know some stuff.
But so you mentioned you have 7 teams and that there are a lot of stock pickers. If a client is represented or talks to one team, would that client's portfolio likely be very different than if the same client was with a different team?
No. So we do give our advisory teams autonomy within a framework of compliance, right? So we need to build framework of compliance. So there might be slight differences, but one of the ways we've tried to build it so that any client who comes in, no matter what team they're working on, has a similar experience is in a couple ways. One, almost all of our private client group, our private client teams have large cap tilt. So, it's similar universe of stocks. Obviously, our institutional side, our SMID strategy is different. Those are more small to mid cap focused. But those teams on the private client side have a similar build. We also have formed our large cap committee, small cap committee on the institutional side, because we have two teams who do that. We feel that having those investment committee meetings allows our teams to share the best of ideas. So while they may disagree on something here, and we think it's a beautiful part of the independent RIA world is that you can have some autonomy, we share ideas so that clients are having a similar experience. And really, in addition to that, we'll put the pure investment side or management part to the side. It is the financial planning. And we've centralized that process and spent a lot of time and effort so that the planning experience is consistent across the client base, no matter which team you work with.
So maybe you can take me through like maybe onboarding of a hypothetical client, but
You don't want to talk about the new account paperwork? It doesn't excite the audience?
but I guess
We do. So a client has the option for it. They don't have to take us up, but in a perfect world, you start where let's say one of the 7 advisory teams, a lead advisor from that team or advisor from that team is working with one of our planners for our financial planning department. They do the onboarding, talk about goals, talk about risk tolerance, and then together, usually the advisory team will build an asset allocation based on that. And of course, based on what the client brought in to the firm. They'll work together and develop a financial plan on the onboarding phase. And then you're talking throughout the year and certainly annually to review that. And the idea is that centralized planning department adds the planning role to a new client. And then the advisory team takes the investment management on. And we have pretty tight processes in place that allow those two teams to work symbiotically to make sure that everyone's rowing the boat in the same direction for the client.
so where do you custody client assets?
So on the private client side, our two largest custodians are Schwab and Fidelity. Like many RIAs, we do have relationships with other RIAs. On the institutional side, believe it or not, we're able to accommodate about 45 different custodians because it's not uncommon for those teams where a client might bring in their own custodian, especially the larger ones, or they may come from a unique environment. The institutional side can be slightly different, but I think for the audience who's listening to this, on the private client side, Schwab and Fidelity are really our two largest custodians.
Is that your call or the client's call, or how does that get determined?
So so we are agnostic. The client can decide, but oftentimes the client may already have an account at Schwab or Fidelity before we get here. And so it's a pretty easy transition. We are also part of the Fidelity referral program. Oftentimes assets are kept at Fidelity from there, but we certainly will recommend custodians if they need it. The short answer to the question is oftentimes a client is one of those custodians before they engage us. And they often just to keep the assets there because it's the easiest thing to do for them.
How do your client assets break down roughly between qualified and non-qualified assets?
So I suppose it depends on how we define qualified in the context. Would you define qualified as like over $1 million of investable assets or over $5 million in investable assets?
What I meant was retirement versus non-retirement.
Retirement versus non-retirement. I'll look at this. We're split pretty closely down the middle, especially on the private client side. We manage a lot of IRAs, but there are plenty of taxable accounts as well. But it's very common for a high net worth family to come in with a couple IRAs for each spouse, a joint account, which is taxable for the family, but it's split pretty closely down the middle. We are not a firm that regularly does a retirement plan consulting where
Do not.
it's a small part of our business, but there are firms out there where a large part of their business is strictly retirement plan consulting, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Something we're familiar with. It's not a large part of our business. And again, I'll define that as company comes in and says, build the retirement plan for me, educate my participants and make recommendations of investment selection for the plan participants. We do that, but it's not a majority of our business.
So Scott, believe it or not, we're almost out of time. I want to give you the opportunity to pick one or two things that you would like the audience to hear that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet.
Listen, I think it's a very interesting time to be in the investment advisory world. And I've been in this world for about 2 decades now. I've seen all sorts of versions of what it's done. I actually think this is one of the most unique times that the industry's been in the last 25 years. The landscape is constantly changing. Private equity has come in and has absolutely changed the landscape of what's going on. I think that the wise advisory firms are paying a lot of attention to that because I think we're going to see an increasing amount of consolidation. You throw AI in the mix, it becomes even more interesting for scalability, but I really think it's a very exciting time. I also think it's a very unique time. And I would just suggest that advisors who are not paying attention to what's going on do. And what I mean by that is have your finger on the pulse, make sure you know what services you need to offer to stay competitive, make sure you know what your clients are looking for and what the expectations are going to be, because more likely than not, you're going to have to keep fees steady, if not reduce them, and provide the same amount of services. And a lot of firms are going to have a difficult time if they're not thinking about that now. It really is a unique time, and I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the next 3 to 5 years. And I think it's going to be a fun ride. Clients are going to be well taken care of. And I think it's a really great time to be in the RIA industry.
Where can people learn more about Pinnacle? Should they go to a website? Should they talk to somebody? What's the best way?
Our website is www.pinnacle-associates.com. PINNACLE is Pinnacle. And there is a section there where you can just very easily schedule an appointment with us through an app called Calendly and say, hey, I want to talk to an advisor. It'll come through our centralized system and we'll get you in touch with someone. It also has a bunch of materials on who we are and financial planning pieces and all sorts of publications. Great way to learn about us.
Super. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Roger, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me on the show, and I hope I was able to share some useful information.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Sterling Insights. Stand out and supercharge your assets, where we provide the info you need from successful leading financial advisors, lawyers, and CPAs. Your hosts, Roger and Catherine Silk, invite you to learn more about Sterling Foundation Management by visiting sterlingfoundations.com.